Okay, so you guys see the title slide? Okay, so I just want to welcome everyone to this Indigenous MTSS Community of Practice. This is our first one. I know it's kind of a hectic time and there's a lot going on for everyone. So we're going to be recording these sessions. So if people miss them, they can come back to it later. Um, and hopefully we'll be able to have discussion with those that are able to make it live. But today we're going to have a special guest who is Superintendent Mike Tatsey from Heart Butte School District. And so I'm very grateful and honored to have him join us this evening. And we'll get right into his presentation. But before I do that, I just wanted to ask if those of you who are joined could please put your information in the chat box, and that will just help us keep track of who all attends these sessions. So just your name, what role you have in your school district, and the name of your school. And then if how long you've been working with MTSS, and I think I'm just using the term MTSS broadly, but perhaps you've done multi-tiered system work through other avenues, like maybe PBIS, MBI, or RTI. So just kind of share, get a sense of people's experience, levels of experience and knowledge around multi-tiered systems. So tiered systems of support. So go ahead and share that in the chat box if you would. And then to get to the topic of what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to be focusing on one of the 7 essential components of MTSS, which is the team-based leadership. And you see on the screen that there are the others that are listed there. And if you don't have it already, we do have the essential components, a document that describes all of these things and explains what they mean and what to look for in your school district for implementation. So if you're interested in that resource, we can share that with you. But we just wanted to focus on this topic of team-based leadership because the schools that I am currently supporting are primarily schools that serve American Indian students. And what I've noticed is that a lot of them, because of just this weird year that we're in with the disruption of the pandemic and districts trying to figure out how to support students and if they're going to be meeting in person or virtually. So there's just a lot of things up in the air. And so what I've noticed is that a lot of schools are still working on developing their team and their teaming structures and really trying to look at how to shape their team-based leadership in their district. So that's why I thought that this would be a good topic to start off this series with. So, we talk about MTSS, and maybe some of you aren't used to all the jargon around this framework. And so that's totally fine. I think it's important for us to really look at frameworks like these that are evidence-based and try to think about the context in which we work. So I just wanted to kind of make that connection for us, even though MTSS may be something that's foreign to us, or maybe it's not really something that we have really bought into or we have really had experience with yet, that I just want to remind us that, as Native people, as Indigenous people, this is something that we have already inherently have learned, and the way that we do work and the way that we come together in our communities. We know that coming together as a team, coming together as a community, and relying on each other, and really highlighting each other's strengths is something that we are familiar with, and it's something that we value as Native people. So I just wanted to say that, even though sometimes it seems like there's all these acronyms and all these fancy ways of saying this, but it's just the value of all of us coming together and um, figuring out how to best work together for the good of our students. So before we get into the nitty gritty, I do want to give an opportunity for introductions. So I've asked you guys to introduce yourselves in the chat, but for those of you that don't know me personally, my name is Veronica Willeto D. Crane. I'm Diné. I grew up in New Mexico on the Navajo Reservation in a very small rural community on my reservation. And I moved to Montana years ago. It feels like a lifetime ago, but and I started working with Montana schools. And my background is in working with schools on the Crow Reservation, but also doing some work with OPI. So that's just a little bit about myself. But I want to give our fearless leader, Sheila Lovato, who is my supervisor, but who also is the leader for us, because we work as a team at the state, on the state level. So for our team of MTSS professionals, she is our fearless leader. So I wanted to give her a moment to introduce herself as well.
Thank you, Veronica. So I am the Continuing Education and Technical Assistance Unit Manager, which is a big title. I always say CETA Unit Manager. And MTSS is part of the work that I do. The MTSS work that we're going to be moving forward that funds Veronica's position, and part of mine is part of a grant called a State Personnel Development Grant. And so I'm excited to have this community practice start. Veronica is amazing at what she does. She's been very valuable to the work that we are doing with MTSS, and the perspective she brings is amazing. So I hope that others will join these as we move forward and learn from her. So thank you, Veronica, for having me. She and I talked about this ahead of time, and I'm going to jump off. I have another meeting that starts at 4:15, unfortunately, but I will look forward to seeing the recording later. So please reach out if you have questions at all, but Veronica, she can take care of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheila.
Thank you.
Okay, before I pass it over to our special guest, I do want to say a few words in case this topic of team-based leadership under the framework of MTSS is new to you. I'm sure there's other ways that you've had professional development around this, or have had talks about this, or are doing this in your school districts already. So I just wanted to kind of show you what in the MTSS framework, what is meant by team-based leadership from that perspective. So on the screen, I have this visual, and basically, it's a group of people that are coming together that have authority, and they also have the responsibility of leading and coordinating all the efforts that surround the MTSS work in the school district. And that this team is made up of key stakeholders. And so we can have more discussion on what that means, or what that would look like for your community or for your school. But there are key stakeholders that are involved. And this is something that's more technical, and that's basically, there's just the emphasis on using agendas and on using data, which I don't think is new to a lot of your schools. This is probably something that you already do, and it's a practice that is common. And then the last piece of this is to develop support and ensure that there's a shared decision-making process. So within MTSS, I think the emphasis is that we share this responsibility of this work of supporting our students and supporting them holistically. And so we never want it to be just one person that carries that burden or that load. And so, really having a process or having a way in which decisions are made together as a team. And, we are sharing the responsibilities and including the voices that we need to include in our school districts, but also in the community. And just to kind of, I want to preface this because before Superintendent Tatsey talks about what they're doing there at Heart Butte, me and him have already had a conversation. And so I just wanted to just bring to your attention some of these elements that I think he's going to touch on when he talks about their team-based leadership there in Heart Butte. So one of the elements is having shared accountability and responsibility that I mentioned before. And so what that involves is, having these reoccurring times that the team comes together, and under the MTSS framework, and they emphasize monthly. And it's really just a time for us to come together and to look at the work that we're doing, to see what kind of barriers exist to what we're trying to achieve, and then to see if we're actually doing what we said that we were going to do, which that key term that's thrown around often is fidelity, but it's just really ensuring that we're doing what we said we were going to do in the way that we said we were going to do it. And then the other one is having supporting collaborative educator teams at the tier 1 and tier 2 instruction level, and then also building teams to focus on tier 2 and tier 3. So does that mean that we have to have a team for tier 1 and a separate one for tier 2 and a separate one for tier 3? No, it doesn't really mean that. But to making sure that there is a teaming structure in place in which that universal instruction that every student receives, whether it has to do with behavior or academics, is being taken care of. And then, of course, the interventions that need to take place for those students who need that extra support, and that there's team leadership in place that ensures that that is taken care of. And then, of course, all of your school districts have continuous school improvement plans and focuses. And so really looking at this work of MTSS and this framework and seeing how it connects to that. And Superintendent Tatsey is going to beautifully share with us how they've done that there at Heart Butte. So just a couple of questions while we're listening to our special guest to reflect on as we're hearing his story is, what does your own teaming structure look like in your school district? And then how is team-based leadership going in your school or district? Whether, specifically as MTSS defines it, but also as you guys as a district personally define it, and personally, what are your personal goals around this idea of team-based leadership? So I'm going to pass it over to another one of our special guests, but you guys probably already know him. So he doesn't need a grand introduction because he's probably someone that you've already met and someone that you've already worked with. But Mr. Don Wetzel is going to introduce our special guest today and our presenter today. He is from the Tribal Relations and Resiliency Unit at the OPI. So I just want to give him a chance to speak and tell us more about Heart Butte.
All right. Thank you, Veronica. It's all official now, aren't we? Boy, we've come a long way. No, I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to listen to you, Veronica, and just the leadership that you've taken with Sheila helping you along. And for those on the call, Veronica was one of our foundational members of a project we called Indigenous MBI. And it was all around what she's doing now, but it was all around the idea of implementing our tribal philosophies and indigenous ways and practices into a school system as best as we could. And it's come a long ways. Before we couldn't even get in a room to discuss it. Now you're running a whole meeting on it. So, I mean, we got something going. What I was going to share with Heart Butte is we had a lot of work happening in Heart Butte over the years. And I think the big shift came when we had Superintendent Mike Tatsey hired there. We were trying various things, and you know, there was administrators that were really good in one thing but not so much in this, and a lot of out of staters really were coming in as administrators. And when we made the turn, it was really under his leadership and his guidance and his belief in who he is. And I may be speaking kind of out wildly, Mike, but I believe in this 100%. You know this. He took in his tribal connections, his thought process, his past experience, more so than any other administrator I worked with. And I've been in here in this work for 10 years. And he just took it and he made it happen. And it really gave me an understanding of the power of a strong administrator. And he did it in a way that reminded me of just a good coach. And I come from an athletic world, and I notice my father was an administrator and he had a certain way about it. And I've really come to realize that team development is very powerful in school administration. And he took it to a whole nother level and came in a humble approach, didn't come down on anybody and say, okay, you all listen. He came in as a team in a team development type way that has really paid dividends. And the thing with the MTSS and our social emotional supports type programs, he also developed a care first attitude. Care first, and then the grades will come. I've never seen that. I've seen people talk about it. I've watched it, and I've gotten headaches as people talked out one side of their mouth and then out the other came another thing. He just has stuck to his guns and made it happen. So I'm honored to introduce him, and he owes me a steak dinner after that. Oh, geez. But thank you so much, Mike, for all you've done. And I'm just excited for this community of practice and to get everybody together and visiting and sharing their experiences. So Superintendent Tatsey.
Sure. Thank you, Donnie. That was why I was starting to believe I'm really something after that little speech. Gee, many Christmases. And actually, I thank you for all of the good words from both of you. And I really just want to share. I'm hoping that more people will look at your recording and ask questions about some of the things that are happening here. We don't have all of the answers for sure. We're hit and miss on a lot of things. But we've tried a lot of different things here at the school in Heart Butte, and a lot of the things that we've tried have been successful. We try and tie that back to the kids as much as we can. So a little bit about kind of my background. I started teaching here in Heart Butte in 1989. When for the very first time that they had a high school here. Prior to that, all they had was a K-8 school, and then they opened a high school in 1989. I was a VOAG teacher, and I came and started the VOAG program. I wrote the curriculum for the school here, and implemented it and taught here for just 3 years. And then I for whatever reason, I was young, and I thought, well, there's other things that a person can do. I went to work for MSU Extension as an extension agent because I have an ag background. I've ranched all my life, come from a ranching family. So I went to more adult ed for a few years with MSU Extension and did a lot of adult ed work in that capacity. And then, still being young, I moved on again to the tribe as a water resource director for about 13 years. And so that's kind of where my administrative experience came from. And then the tribe and tribal politics got all hot and heavy, and I was always right in the middle of it. I don't know why I always kind of jump in the middle of the fire, but I did. And that got kind of tiresome after a while. So the school district in Browning was needing a VOAG teacher. So I jumped ship from the tribe and went to work with Browning Public Schools. And I worked there for 10 years as a VOAG teacher. And then I went back to school and got my master's in administration, and tried to get a job in Browning as an administrator, and that just, never happened. I tried for a couple, 2-3 years, and wasn't happening. And so I took a couple of years off and did have a little contracting business and took care of my ranch and some other things. And the job opened in Heart Butte, and I actually applied for the superintendent job probably about 6 years ago or so and wasn't successful in getting it. But when it opened up again, I applied and I got the job 2.5 years ago. And when I came to work here, the school district had been through about 10 different superintendents in 9 years. So they were changing superintendents and administrators almost every year, sometimes twice a year. And so it was really, the consistency wasn't there. They had a couple of superintendents that were from the area that were tribal members. And, I'm not going to say that worked good or bad or indifferent. It just, they were here for a year and then gone. I'm from the area. I live just down the road, just about 10 miles. So I'm familiar with our community here in Heart Butte. And so that has really helped me in a lot of ways. And one of the ways that's really helped me is just knowing who people are. And politics is on every reservation. We know that it's just part of the deal. And whether you work for the tribe or the school district, politics are there. And those are things that we have to wade through in order to be successful. And I really think that we did that. We waded through those politics and we developed a framework that we had a lot of different input from different people. And before I go any further, Ron and Nicole and Marlene, I know Ron and Nicole are from Rocky Boy, right? And
All three of us are.
all three of you from Rocky Boy. And what are your guys' roles at Rocky Boy?
Well, I'll let the girls and ladies go first. Go ahead, Nicole or Marlene.
This is Marlene. Can you hear me? I am the K-6 school counselor here at the elementary.
Good deal. Nice to meet you, Marlene.
Mhm.
Nicole just had pulled out. She just started recently working with me. I'm the Aware. This is Ron. I'm the Aware project coordinator for Rocky Boy. I started in December, and she just got this group. She's basically a para here. She's the principal's spouse, and she's been very valuable to me. Start working with me. We're doing some resource mapping and different things right now. So, trying to comply with the guides and with the process, with the MTSS process, and working with K through 12 here under Boyd St. Pierre. So, we're just jumping in and we're trying to line things out. We're trying to get things organized and trying to get the teams moving and interventions going, because there's a truancy problem here that we got that, we're trying to tackle and get on top of that. And, You know, as we know, COVID has played a big role in a lot of it. And, you know, the kids are showing up. They've been switching around 2 days on, 3 days. So we're trying to get them back on. They've been coming back for about 6 weeks now or so. And so there's a rotation happening.
Good deal.
But it's very challenging. That's it. Thank you.
For sure, it is. It is very challenging, and it's even more so when you're on a reservation in that reservation setting. That it is challenging, and truancy is really an issue that I think every Indian school deals with. And we've worked really hard on attendance and that communication, and we know that there's all these underlying issues to why kids aren't coming to school. And that's kind of what we focus on. And one thing that I and probably it's not very good advice for some people, but one of the things that I'm really bad at is following the rules. I'm a terrible rule follower and things like that. And sometimes it hurts me, and other times it works out. And that's just chances that you take. And as a superintendent, I guess I really have to answer to the community and the school board when I take those chances, and OPI. And I've kind of stepped out on a limb sometimes and said, no, that isn't going to work here at Heart Butte. This is what's going to be beneficial to our kids, and what you're telling us to do doesn't work here. And we know that. And so this is the way we're going to do it. We're not going to focus on something. So when I tell you about the process that we took, and some of the rules that we didn't follow, I'm not really going to jump into too much, but just know that we really just forged ahead and did what we thought was right. And for the most part, those things come out pretty good. So can I share my screen? Veronica, will it let me? I can. Okay, I'm just going to show everybody, just give you a quick little overview of our framework that we developed. And when I came to the school here at Heart Butte, there were very few processes in place. Even a simple process like taking leave, that wasn't there. Nobody knew where to go. When I take leave, who do I bring my leave slip to? You know, so just simple little processes like that weren't there. And so we established a framework that doesn't necessarily deal with that, but that framework set up a kind of a roadmap for us. And then it gave us some guidance as to what we were going to do. So I'm going to try to share my framework with you real quick and just go over it real quickly, and then we'll talk about how we came up with everything. Okay, so there you're seeing it, right? Okay, so this is our framework for our school. We have 4 different parts to it. We have health and well-being, safety, culture and self-identity, and instruction. And with each of those parts to our framework, we have certain things identified that we want to focus on. So if you look at the health and well-being part of it, a tiered system of support plan, and that's where we're talking MTSS, that fits into that. Trauma-informed and restorative justice practices, self-care, and community and tribal partnerships. You'll see that community and tribal partnerships and family involvement is something that we've added to that. And pretty much every one of our 4 different areas, because we think that's important. Safety, we have positive school climate. That's something that I really, really encourage and enforce in our school system. When you walk into our school, we have a smudge table, a table with smudge set up there. Staff, students, whoever want to use it are welcome to smudge every morning when they come in, or every time that they want to. We've got enough to respect it. We leave a lighter, our matches there, and we haven't had anybody try to burn the school down yet. So that pretty much stays in place there, and we just encourage it. And then I also tell everybody, including the school board, that when you walk into the school, I expect people to be positive about everything. And so, and I'm not afraid to tell my bosses that. I'm not afraid to tell community members that, because, you know, a lot of times you have people that come into the school and we don't always have them come to visit because things are going well. We have them come to visit because, you know, they're upset with something, or maybe their child is in trouble and they need to have a visit with the teacher. And I just ask them when they come into the school, you know, when you come in, just have a positive attitude about things. I expect that from my staff and I expect it from students. And so we don't need to have people come into our school with a negative way of thinking, because it rubs off on people. So I really try to help that process along. And then consistent routines. Our kids need that because of some of the backgrounds they come from. School-wide behavior plan. That school-wide behavior plan just offers that consistency that we need. Fits into MTSS. Bully prevention. Attendance matters because we think attendance is important, and that it is in order for our kids to succeed. And then again, family involvement, and that ties into safety. All of that ties into safety, because kids need to feel safe when they come to school. So everything that we address in that safety quadrant um, deals with kids coming in and feeling safe. And we base everything that we do around a buffalo. And so that kind of leads me into culture and self-identity. So when kids feel safe and come into our school, we liken that to what the buffalo used to do for us. It was our everything. It was our safety. It was our food. It was our medicine. It was our lodges. It was our whole way of life. And so when we talk about that buffalo, and our school kind of represents that womb of the buffalo, where an animal, that baby is grown and nurtured, and then once it is born, it comes out, and that buffalo mother still continues to be its safe haven. So we want our school to be that, and we really try to make that happen. So kids want to be here. They want to be in a positive environment. They want those consistent routines. They want to have people that care about them. And so that makes them want to be in school. And then culture and self identity is probably one of our more important parts as well. Um, we integrate that culture into our lessons. We try to use our Blackfeet language. We're really building on that program every year. We've included some immersion classes in our elementary and high school and junior highs. Um, and then we try to do some school-wide cultural practices all the time. I was honored the other day by the staff and by community members and by my family, and was transferred a war bonnet, which I'm very proud of. And we try and do things like that. Next week, we're going to have the chief of our tribe, Earl Oldperson, is going to come in, and he's going to give names to our K1 and 2 immersion classes, our students in those classes. It's going to give Blackfeet names to the ones that want it, and the school is going to be able to witness that. Um, and then we have a very good youth leadership team at the high school level. They're involved in a lot of things. They're involved in our school drum group. And then again, that community involvement. We try to include the community in all of those cultural activities that we do, because that's where our kids are going to end up, is in our community, and we want them to be able to practice those cultural activities there. And the last one that we have is instruction, our learning goals that teachers have, student engagement, making sure that kids are understanding, using the data that we collect to drive our instruction, having cultural responsive pedagogy, just meaning that we include all of that cultural activities in our daily lessons. Again, attendance is hit on. And one more time, we have parent and family involvement in all of that instructional activities. When we took this framework and we started to establish it, I really identified those 4 areas that we needed to focus on. And then I brought those 4 quadrants to the rest of our administration, to our staff, our school board and to our community. And that's how we came up with those components that are listed that I just went over. And so I tried to take each one of those and develop important values that everybody wanted to be included in there, and we narrowed it down to what we have. And from those 4 quadrants and those small those goals that we have listed in there, we developed a committee for each one of those. And we took those goals that we had, and then we developed a action plan for each one of those. Each one of those areas, we listed out activities that we were going to do, who was responsible for carrying them out, in a budget, and who they were going to work with to make sure that they were successful in completing those. And as each one was completed, we checked it off, and we did a small assessment to make sure that we covered all of our bases, and made sure that we were successful in each one of those. If we missed something, we always went back. It's kind of really just a working plan all the time. We refine it, we go back and make changes to it, we add things to it. Each of those committees, like Veronica mentioned, they talk about a monthly meeting. Each of those committees of each of those 4 areas meet every other week, and they go over their action plan. They add to it. They complete things. They make sure those activities that are planned for the month are carried out, or they move them to another month if things happen, like COVID. COVID really threw a kink in a lot of those activities. So we got really behind, but we're slowly, because we've come back to school, we're slowly trying to get caught up and provide those activities for our community and for our school. Once a month, we have a district leadership team meeting. And that district leadership team meeting, each one of those committees report out on their activities to the committee. The school board, a couple of school board members are involved in that district leadership team. Our SIG team is included in that. OPI representatives are included and give reports at that district leadership team meeting. And that just kind of glues everything together so that we know that we're not missing out on any part of it. Before I move any further ahead, does anybody have any questions or anything on that as far as the direction that we're headed with it?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, my first question, sir, is what drives this? I've kind of come in and I kind of really immediately established the community to get involved in, the CMT, but I broke them down into subgroups, and I really look at this as the academic side and the behavior side, and that's more or less what it is I work throughout the country in different places, and that's my question, is what drives this? Is it the academic? Is it the emotional? Is it the cultural? Is it all the above? I mean, what part is more important? Is there such a thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I say this all the time. It might seem funny coming from a superintendent or a leader of a school. Instruction is the least important. And I say that because I know that if kids feel safe,
yeah,
they're taken care of mentally, and they know who they are and where they come from, the cultural piece. If those 3 things are taken care of, instruction is going to take care of itself.
Yeah, because I kind of look at this as the medicine wheel, and that's kind of, I was raised at Fort Belknap. That's where I'm originally from. Mm-hmm. Teresa Lambo Walker is my grandmother. You might have heard of her over the years, but she was an educator down there, and that's who raised me, and I've been gone out in the world for many, many years. I just came back 3 years ago. But my point is you kind of answered with what I kind of thought you were going to say.
Exactly.
And I thank you.
You bet. And so we really, the 2 things that we really focus on the most, and probably get most of my attention are the health and well-being and the
Yeah,
culture and self-identity piece.
yeah,
Those two areas right there, we focus on because we think if we get to the root problem, we know that if kids aren't coming to school, there's probably something going on at home.
yeah,
And so if we can take care of what's going on at home through counseling, and we don't just offer counseling to our students, we offer it to families too. And so, and we provide that. We have some whole families that'll come in to a contracted counselor that we have with all of the credentials, and they'll have actual weekly counseling sessions with that counselor, and we pay for it. The school district pays for it. And so we know that if we take them and we make them healthy, they're going to want to be in school. They're going to want to participate in culture and all of those things that happen. And then they're going to feel good about themselves. So they're going to be able to learn then. And
yeah,
so we have a complete faith in that the teachers we hired are going to be able to deliver instruction. And that's not to say we forget about them. We still have professional development. We still offer a lot of different strategies that our teachers can implement. We still do a lot of things focusing on instruction, but we know that if we don't do the other things, kids aren't going to learn. And
yeah,
so, and there's kind of, and I don't, I'm very proud of this, but I don't like to brag about it, even though I tell a lot of people. I don't do it in a bragging way. I
yeah,
do it in a way that to show that the things that we're doing by taking care of the whole child and focusing on their mental health and well-being and their culture, we focus on that. We know that instruction is going to take care of itself. So proof of that is we're the only school district in Montana. Now, because of COVID, that's going to be skewed a little bit this next year, these next couple of years, probably because we haven't been able to test and do it with fidelity and all of that crazy stuff that's supposed to happen. But before COVID, we were the only school district in Montana and the only school district from any reservation school that moved all three of their elementary, junior high, and high school out of the bottom 5% of academic or student achievement.
yeah.
Every school, reservation school in Montana is in that bottom 5%. And we were the only one to take all three and move them out of that. And we didn't
Great.
do it because we focused on instruction. We did that because we focused on health and well-being and the culture of our kids. And because we did that and we put them first, they're able to learn. And so we moved them out of that bottom 5%. And we plan on continuing to grow and be higher than that, and eventually being a school that is in that top percentage of student achievement in the state. And I think we can do it. I think it's going to happen, and it's not going to take us really that long to do. We have quality teachers hired, and the good thing about it, a lot of those quality teachers that we hired are from right here in our community, and they buy into the program that we have. They take care of our kids. They take time out to make sure that our kids' health and well-being are taken care of. And they don't squeal when we take kids out for cultural activities. They believe in that. They participate in it. And so that's the beauty of the whole thing. They bought into that and know that if they take care of these other things that we have, that we've identified, that these kids are going to learn better. And so that's really the beauty of the whole thing is they've taken and bought into this. And one of the reasons that they bought into it is because they're the ones that have developed it. They're the ones that have put those plans to you. They're the ones that put those goals on paper, and they're the ones that are monitoring it to see if things are happening. And so that's one of the reasons they've really bought into it, is because they're the ones that have developed the plan. All I did is lay it out there for them and say, these are the things that I think are important. And then they come in and they laid everything out. And when I say they, I mean everybody from the kitchen staff, the janitors, the teachers' assistants, our paras, to certified staff members, school board, and community members. They were all involved in this whole planning process. And so they've bought into it. So then nobody can say, oh, you know, safety isn't important. How come we have safety on there? They know why they do, and they were involved in that planning process. So you can always force people to do this and say, this is something that's non-negotiable. I hate non-negotiables, but we can always say that and say, this is a non-negotiable. You have to do it. Well, sure, they're going to do it, but you know, there's not going to be much care in it. It's never going to come from right here. And this is really where it has to come from, is right here from the heart. And that's why people are successful. When they do things from the heart and they talk about it from the heart, then people buy into it. And once they buy into it, it's their deal, you know, and we know as well as everybody that if it's their idea and their deal, they're going to do it with fidelity. They're going to make sure that they're successful. And in the end, it's the kids that are the ones that get the benefit of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And the one thing about it is we went from the high 60, 68% graduation rate to like last year a 91% graduation rate. And we did that because we went back and we cared about what kids are doing. We cared about what teachers were looking at and what they were presenting. We cared about the way they were grading. We give them the opportunity that if kids were missing school, there's a reason for it. So give them the opportunity to get back and make work up and things like that. So we really put it back to erring on the side of the kids' benefit. And if once we did that, we weren't just giving them grades. We weren't just giving it to them. We gave them the opportunity to succeed. And once we were able to do that, give them that taste of success and say, here it is for you to succeed. All you have to do to go from a 59.7% to get a passing grade is this. It's up to you to do. And they did it, you know, so you just got to put it back in their lap and give them the opportunity to say, yeah, I can be successful. And once they get a taste of it, and they take off. And so that's, you know, there's really no big secret to what's happening here. It's just all of that really involvement of everybody and making sure that they buy into it. And everything that we do, we always put back in that same question is, okay, if we do this, how does it affect our kids? Because it's not about me. It's not about you as a teacher. It's not about you as a cook, not about you as a janitor. It's about how does this affect our kids? So we went, you know, an example of the janitor thing. I put to my maintenance staff all the time, if you don't clean our hallway here, how do you think kids feel about it when they walk in and they know that I'm going to walk into a dirty school? How can you expect our kids to have pride if you don't have pride? If you're not positive when you walk into school? If you don't walk down the hallway with your chest kind of puffed because, hey, them floors are really shiny, you know, how can that be? Or at lunch, if you're putting out a frozen pizza every Wednesday, how can you be proud? And how can our kids feel good about themselves if that's what they eat every Wednesday? Let's peel our own potatoes and slice up our own carrots and put it in there with that boiling meat and serve it for lunch. I would rather do that every Wednesday instead of eating a frozen pizza, right? And so let's have pride in what we do. And that's going to bring everything. All of our kids are going to feel better about themselves. They're going to want to be here in school. They feel safe because they got a good warm meal. They feel safe because the school doesn't have broken windows and things like that. And then teachers are greeting people and they have a smile on their face. And I'm not saying that happens every day. I mean, I have crabby days too. And sometimes people don't want to come and see me. But I can guarantee you that, hey, if you come into our school, you better have a smile on. You better be telling kids hello, asking them how things are going. And I don't want to hear anybody hollering at anybody. They all know that now. And then we get that report back from the community that, hey, now, what are you guys doing up there? Because, you know, when I walk into the school, it just feels good. It feels positive. I don't feel that heaviness that was there before. And really, it's just one of them deals of, hey, what we're doing is it's not rocket science. We're just smiling. We're greeting kids. And so it's not that big of a deal. One thing I know you said we were an hour, but I have a sign hanging in my office, and we talk about our school being welcoming. And I really stress that from the beginning, and I know that our staff knows that anybody that comes into our school is always welcome. You don't always have to have the right paperwork in your hand when you're a parent or a kid. If you come in here and you show that you want to be here, I don't care if you don't have the right paperwork, you're welcome to come and start anytime. But I have a sign in my office that when I came, we established a different teachers lounge, and I walked by this teachers lounge one day, and at the beginning of the year, and there was a big sign hanging on the door, and it says no students allowed in the staff lounge. And I took that sign down and I took it to a staff meeting. I said, who put this up? And nobody really wanted to take credit for it. And I said, we talk about being welcoming. How welcoming is it to have a big old sign with big old black letters that say, no students allowed? And they said, well, it's a teacher's lounge. Students shouldn't go in there. And I said, why not? Why shouldn't they go in the teacher's lounge? Why are they going in there anyway? And they said, well, to get coffee. And I said, well, they must like coffee then. Why not put a big sign up that says, welcome to our lounge, serve yourself coffee? Well, we have this stuff and that stuff in there. And I said, okay, well, that's fine. But instead of putting a big old sign up like that, we know that they want to go in there and get coffee. Let's put coffee out for kids out in the hallway. And that's what we did. And it eliminated kids going into the teacher's lounge because the only reason they was going there to get coffee. But we gave them what they wanted. And we didn't have to have a negative sign up on our wall that says no students allowed. So that was just my point to everybody, that everything that we do has to be welcoming, we have to build relationships with each other and our kids. And if we do that, kids are going to want to be here. Community members are going to want to be here. Staff is going to want to be here. And in doing that and developing a framework and practicing those things that we have there, teachers want to stay. Our turnover rate, when I came here, on July 1st, we had 6 of the 9 high school teachers positions weren't even filled. Now we look for maybe 1 high school teacher. Last year we looked for 2. And the reason we looked for 2 is because we added another math teacher, and we moved our social studies teacher, our science teacher, to the academy for our kids that need that little extra support. So that was really the only reason that we needed new teachers at the high school level. We only had 1 teacher in the elementary school leave last year, and they went to Fort Peck because that's where they were from. And so that turnover rate is really decreased because people want to be here. They feel welcome. They feel comfortable. They like that positive atmosphere, and so that turnover rate is really decreased because of that. So I think I've talked enough. Did I cover everything you wanted me to cover, Veronica?
Yeah, I think you did. Did you guys have any other questions for him? For Superintendent Tatsey?
And feel free to call us, or I think, did I put my email in the deal? I'll stop sharing that. If I didn't put my email in the deal, I'll do it right now. So you can feel free to call me or email me and ask questions. Or if you have any kind of problems that you come across that you want me to visit with you about, I'm more than happy to do that. And hopefully we can help you. On one of the things that I didn't mention is we've really went a long ways on building a relationship with the tribe, and with that, we've really focused on mental health needs of our kids in our community, and we've put together a shelter for our students, a counseling center for mental health and drug and alcohol abuse, or any kind of counseling needs that our students, our community might need. We're working on that right now. We're putting together, we have the facility in place. We're currently working on getting it licensed. We know that those social issues that kids deal with is something that we have to address. We've taken it really serious. The suicide attempts and ideations are high. And so we're dealing with that, and we're addressing it. We're taking it on kind of with an iron fist, and we're going to defeat it so that our kids can feel better about themselves in the situations that they're in sometimes. So yeah, it's something that we think is really important to take care of. Okay, Ronica, Donnie, did you think I could talk for an hour?
Yes, I'm surprised that you did. I've never seen that before.
No. Thank you guys for listening to me. Sometimes I get on the roll and say too many
Thank
things.
you so much for sharing what you did, because I think, we're talking about team-based leadership and we're talking about teaming structures, but you've shown us how through those things you've been able to really get to the needs of students. You've been able to get everyone on board, and everyone's at the table, everyone has their role, everyone is making sure that there isn't a student that is being left out and that is being overlooked. um, and then your framework that you shared with us is really reflective of you know meeting the holistic needs of students. And I know that MTSS right now in Montana is really emphasizing academics and behavior and social emotional. um, and so that's you know those are all important and needed. And I think one of the pieces that is missing, and that Superintendent Tatsey and I have talked about, is that cultural identity piece, right? And that's what he's included in his team-based leadership, and the way he's structured his teams is he's made sure that that cultural identity piece was included. And so that's something that I want us to walk away with. And also just some of these questions that I have on the screen. I think, Superintendent Tatsey talked about that. He talked about the buffalo and about how, what they do ties into those teachings, and to that way of life. For the Blackfeet people. And so that's something that I think is important to think about is, how are we doing this work in our schools, and is it reflective of our tribal values? Is it reflective of who we are as Indian people? And then making sure that we're meeting all the needs of our students, including the cultural identity piece. And then also, that's something that Superintendent Tatsey touched on, is the inclusiveness of what he did, right? He talked about how he included staff, he included the community. He made sure all the voices were at the table. There was even student leadership piece in there that was involved in that. And so really thinking about the inclusiveness of how you're going to do this work, and including who's on your teams, and then making sure that it's equitable, right? Um, so making sure that there isn't, you know, everyone has an equal footing, everyone has an equal place on that team, and is involved in that work. And so that's kind of what I wanted to touch on before we close. and then also to leave you with this reflection as you guys head off into whatever it is that you're going to be doing next this evening, and go be with your families. But I just wanted you to reflect on, how is this going for you in your school? um, what's going well, because there's always things that are going well, right? Sometimes we get into this mindset where we're deficit based thinking, and so we always see the problem first. But reflecting on what is going well, what are we already doing that is good in our schools when it comes to our teams, and when it comes to um, the leadership in our schools, and then looking at what are those challenges. And, I'm really grateful to Superintendent Tatsey for offering himself as a resource to you guys, that you guys can reach out to him and have conversation with him. He's easily accessible. I just pick up the phone and able to have a conversation with him about these things. And so I know you guys will be able to as well. And of course, Don Wetzel is on. You can always reach out to him and offering him on his behalf. And then, of course, myself, I'm an MTSS implementation specialist and working with Native schools in Montana. So you are welcome to reach out to me. But yeah, I just wanted to close with that. And does anybody have any other thoughts before I end this?
I just want to comment, I appreciate the conversation and the wisdom. It's very, very respectful. And thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, all of you guys, for joining and for spending this extra time in your workday with us. And I just want to say thank you to Superintendent Tatsey as our special guest, for all that you shared with us and for the chance to learn from you. And also thank you to Mr. Wetzel and everyone else that was able to join us today. You guys have a good evening. Have fun with your families, and we'll see you next month.
Yeah, thank you, Veronica. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you,
Veronica.
guys.
See you
See
guys.
you all. Bye.
Bye.